Is Misha Kareen Niconvard. My name is Karen Ward, and I am what you would call an Irish Celtic shaman. And I'm very honoured to be a board member of the Society for Shamanic Practice. I'm here to talk to you today about the art, and I use that word deliberately, of shamanic journeying in the Irish Celtic style. And of course, there's an Irish name for it, a very ancient word called Imram, and the plural is Imrama. And that is translated as a wonder voyage. Isn't that such a beautiful idea of going on a wonder voyage? And it's very evocative, and it certainly speaks of the poetry of the Irish Gaelic language. Now, many of you will be used to shamanic journeying, or indeed, if you're new, you might be curious about it. So I'm going to give you a little bit of um, a mini workshop, shall we say, on how it goes in the Irish Celtic way, and that might confirm or reaffirm what you already know from many other traditions, or it might add some nuances that you may not have known about. So, of course, when we journey shamanically, when we journey transpersonally, so here's our physical body, our mind, our brain, our hearts. So, when we journey to that altered state, or some would say dreamlike state, we do so from a place of being grounded and anchored. We do not do so under the influence of any alcohol or drugs. And of course, yes, there is a whole wonderful section of shamanism about um, a psychedelic, wonderful plant medicine, but that is for another day. I'm talking to you about what some would call sober journeying. So, in other words, we're using perhaps a little bit of breath work, but the power of intent solely to journey. Now, if any of you are aware of coaching, be that business coaching, life coaching, or whatever, often you are asked by the person, how do you learn best? What a great question. And of course, the old Irish medicine people who would have been druids way back in the mists of time, when they were teaching the younger ones, usually the elders teaching the younger ones, under the hedges in the hedge schools, they would have had a sense of, do you learn visually? Are you more auditory? Or are you what's called kinesthetic? Now, this is really important. So if you're visual, if I said to you, remember a time when you were last on holidays, you might go and you can visualize a scene from that particular holiday. Or somebody might go, oh, yes, I remember that holiday, and they are hearing the sound of the waves, or they are hearing the laughter or the music or the songs of that place. Or some people might instantly be brought back to the feeling they had in that place, the kinesthetic. But in truth, many of us are two or perhaps three intertwined. So we have an element of all three. Personally, I am very visual, but that kinesthetic knowing would also be there. So therefore, when I journey, when I go on an Imram wonder voyage, I will see through my mind's eye, and I will feel, and that gives me, ah, yes, I am going into this transpersonal altered state. Sometimes people are very frustrated when they journey for the first few times because they hear others sharing these vivid, technical, or film-like scenarios, And they're going, I don't see that. But they might hear it or they might sense it. Others, myself and my husband John, actually in Cree, we have known people to journey by taste, I know, and even by smell. If you think about it, the smell in a hospital, the smell in a forest, the smell after rainfall, it's so evocative. The whole perfume and aftershave industry is based on that. Therefore, it's good to spend a little bit of time before you go on the journey with, how will I best receive the information from my journey? And it might be 1, 2, or 3 of those ways. The next thing is to realize that journeys begin, are birthed with intention. This is the key to any Imram journey. You need to know why you're doing what you're doing. It's a little bit like if we were traveling somewhere, I would start from A and I would travel to B, and I might use a map or I might chart which street will I go down. So I will have a sense of where I'm going. Now I might know what I will meet on the way because similar to the journeys, that's why we're going there, to explore. But I will have a very strong focus. And the easiest way that John and I find in our School of Irish Celtic Shamanism, Shli an Cree, the way of the path, the pathway of the heart, is to simply say, my intention is to journey, and it might be to the other world. There are 3 aspects to that. You can go to the lower world, a place of power. You can go out to the middle world, and this would be a place of heart. Or you can go to the upper world, a place of wisdom. Or you might just specify, my intention is to journey to the other world, and let your spiritual guidance, let the issue you're working with decide whether you need power or wisdom or love. So really strong, my intention is to journey for, my intention is to journey, it could be something physical, to heal my sore shoulder. My intention is to journey to overcome my depression. So it might be emotional. My intention is to journey to find out what's blocking my energy. My intention is to journey to heal my relationship. But remember, you can only heal your side of the relationship. The other person, that is their prerogative. So a clear, strong intention. Something short, succinct, hone it down. The next thing that's important is to see who's going to go with you. In other words, you're not going to journey alone. You're going to bring in your spiritual guidance. Now, you might call this spiritual allies, spiritual guides, paranimals, ancestors, or indeed you might be journeying to find out who they are. My intention is to journey to find out who are my spiritual guides. That's a really nice and really simple Imram to do. And if you know who they are already, invite them along, but also be open to new guides turning up. And that's such a joy, wonderful to behold. The next thing is protection. Now, not protection in a scary way. Is there danger right there? But protection in the way that you would put on an overcoat in the winter over the summertime when you're in shorts and a t-shirt. So in other words, you're layering up because you are leaving the mundane world and going to the other world. So therefore, there are negative energies out there, and you want to journey to your Imram in safety with your spiritual guidance. And you don't want to pick up anything on the way. What type of protection? Good question. It's really down to you. Some people might use Reiki symbols. Archangel Michael is always very good. There might be an invisibility cloak, Harry Potter style. There might be a little suit of armor. There could be guardian angels' wings. Whatever tradition you come from, whatever that is. But we highly recommend, certainly in our tradition, that there is protection, that you layer up, so to speak, before you start the journey. I mentioned before, it's important that you are not under the influence of alcohol or drugs, recreational or medicinal. You would also find a quiet space where you won't be disturbed, because you don't need to be on your wonderful journey and then somebody unbeknownst barges in on top of you. You want to make sure that you have privacy for this. Also, to be fed and watered, make sure you've gone to the toilet so that you've got an element of at least 20 minutes to half an hour. I would even say an hour, so that there's a spaciousness, that you create a cozy nest. You're not too hot, you're not too cold. You might be lying or sitting. It's up to you. However, if you feel that you might fall asleep on the journey, then I would highly recommend that you sit in meditation pose. Back in the mists of time, our Irish Celtic shaman, the Druids, used to sit on a sharp, pointy rock so that they wouldn't fall asleep. They couldn't fall asleep. It was a really good way, especially for the new apprentices, to keep awake. Now, when you've set the scene, you have the time, the space, the beautiful venue, you might have some sacred items with you. We carry what's called a mala nefa. Now, this is a healing medicine bag or bundle, and it is analogous to many indigenous traditions over the world who would have their version. I'm thinking of the mesa from South America, or the amulets from the Sangoma tradition in Africa, and so on. It's basically sacred items, but wrapped, as you can see, in tweed cloth, in cloth that would be part of the tradition of Ireland. You might decide to drum, or you might decide to rattle, but that's usually if you are advanced in your shamanic practice. Certainly to start off with, we would recommend that you put on a drumming or a rattle track so that you can lie or sit and focus on the journey itself rather than also playing the drum or the rattle, unless you find that that would be really helpful to you. That is your prerogative. Now, what is likely to happen when you go on the journey? Well, in our tradition, we would start from what we call a nature place. So a nature place, a nematon, a special place. It could be a sacred site, but it equally could be your garden. It could be a place you visited in your childhood. It might be a fantasy paradise beach, but somewhere you feel very comfortable by yourself with your spiritual guidance. We highly recommend that there is a large rock or a tree as your anchor. This is really important, this anchor, to make sure that you journey out safely and come back safely. And in fact, in our Mola Nefas, we have what we call lia, so they would be stones as well as other sacred items. And you might even have a stone in your hand. We would often hold it in the left hand, the side of the physical heart. So that's another anchor. There, like many indigenous traditions, there is a dismemberment of some description. In our case, it's usually the wind. So you can visualize yourself lying by the tree, the anchor tree, or the rock in your nature place, and the wind comes along and whips your hair, your skin, your clothes, your body, leaving the essence of your Celtic soul to travel down for power, out for love, up for wisdom. And to note with the drum or the rattle or whatever music you choose in the background, there that sonic drive, that beat to help you on the journey. Sometimes people find themselves climbing up on the back of particularly a power animal. It might be a bear or a stag, um, and journeying up, down, or out. It might be remembering a particular scene. There might be ancestors there, but to pay attention to what's happening. There are different ways to journey. Personally, I journey very fast. The dismemberment has barely happened, and boom, I'm somewhere. One of my spiritual guides might be indicating something, or there's a sense of what I need to do very quickly. And then for the rest of the drum track or the rattle, I'm enjoying time out. However, there are others who need to spend a while getting into the journey, looking around, listening, and then as the journey peaks, maybe the drumming's a little bit faster, they begin to get that insight, whether visually whispering on the wind, their guides talking to them. It might be in the form of music, or it will be a knowing. And then there's that lovely descent toward the end of the journey. Or we have also known people to spend 18 minutes going, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. And just as the callback signal comes, boom, there's a flood of information. Now, the callback signal is important. Usually, if you're going to use a shamanic drum track, and you're very welcome to go on the Shlian Cree YouTube channel, where we have a 15-minute and a half an hour drum track, and there's usually a boom, 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 and that's your signal to start. And then at the other side, the same 3 beats 3 times, the Celtic 3, to say now it's time to come back. Most traditions have a version of that. Sometimes in the whole journey, whether it be 15, 20 minutes or whatever, there's a flash of something that's, oh, it's an insight, or it might be, I don't really know what that means, but it's significant. So that we come back from the journey, and of course, the wind will bring back our skin, our hair, our clothes, or whatever the dismemberment might be. Sometimes it's getting into the water, and then your soul takes off, and then you come back into the water, back into your body. And from then, you gently go through some simple stretches, again, grounding. Now remember, you might have the stone in your hand still. As you leave your nature place, giving thanks to the rock, the tree, and your spiritual guidance. You count from 10 back to 1, open your eyes. There's a stretching, something so simple as this. Point your toes, maybe up overhead, point your heels, stretch from side to side. And then you are back. And again, we would recommend taking your journal out and jotting down what has happened or not happened in your Imran. So what type of things do happen? Well, that's a very good question. For our students, we would say if something happens in your journey that you're cognizant, your rational mind would never have thought of, well, then you're journeying. So if there's purple trees with polka dot flowers on them, if there's unicorns coming out of the lake, if dolphins are flying out of the sky, if there's something really unusual that your mind would never have thought of, well, that's a fairly good indicator that you are in an altered state. Now, it doesn't have to be as exotic as that, but usually there's something different. It's not the mundane world we live in. it's something different. It might be more magnified. Um, the spiritual guidance often give us help, but not in great conversations. There's often a gesture or maybe one word or something that lets you know you are on the right track. So, for example, a beloved grandmother might indicate her garden, and this might be fresh, healthy food is important for you as you overcome your anxiety or depression. And your rational mind might never have thought of that. My gosh, God, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought food would have anything to do with things of the mind. Perhaps it might be if you're journeying for something to do with work in a difficult situation. Um, a spirit guide might indicate um, repose. It's important. Sleep, rest, pray, move from your head to your heart. So there might be a sense of this work situation is difficult, but the fact that you are not getting any sleep and that you're not rested isn't helping. So the guide is to take that time, take time out for yourself. We've known situations where there might be a flashback to an earlier time, to a pattern in the family. Somebody might be journeying with intention of overcome worrying, and they see their mother and their granddad literally worrying, and you think, gosh, this is a habit that I've picked up. What am I worrying about? And it might be an indication of perhaps they need a little bit of therapy, counseling, or psychotherapy to go with the shamanic work, the shamanic healing that they might be seeking. So there's insight, perhaps even revelation. Shamanic journeys and Imram in our tradition, they're very simple, but they're very profound. They can give us that spaciousness that I mentioned that we don't necessarily have in our regular life. So we're ruminating on the problem, the issue, we're trying to solve. Whereas in this Imram, we take time to simply be, to trust in our guidance, to believe that the answer will come. It's here somewhere. But most importantly, to surrender to what is. There can be um, an element of trying to control our journeys, and that's not going to happen. They unfold for us, and our spiritual guidance will certainly help with that. And that's maybe the journeys where we spend ages doing nothing, listening to the drum, sound of the heartbeat, or whatever it is, and then that wonderful insight, that jewel, that gem, that piece of treasure that will give us what we need. I hope that has given you an insight into the Irish Celtic tradition, but more than likely it has also resonated with you from whatever tradition you come from or you have visited and learned from before. We humans throughout the world, we're not so different. Sometimes John and I often smile and think, do you know what? The weather has an awful lot to do with how our shamanic traditions are different but equal. We will go inside to a warm, cozy cairn because we live in a cold, damp climate, whereas for some, the Grand Canyon or those desert lands of North Africa are outdoors. So why would you need to go in? You get the idea. It is an honor and a pleasure to offer here a little mini tutorial, if you will, just giving you a different perspective, perhaps, on some of the training you might have. And if you are listening to this and you haven't had any training, that's absolutely fine. But I would recommend that you go to a good, reputable teacher, somebody who can guide you with the simple steps to tap in to, no doubt, the innate medicine that you carry within your heart and within your soul. Beannacht agus grá, blessings and love.